Hello, and welcome to this week's MBY Devotion. We've been looking into the story of Job, a good man who Satan took everything away from in an attempt to show that people only love God when they're being blessed. So far, Job has had his wealth, his family, and his health taken from him, yet he still refuses to speak negatively about God. That's pretty darn impressive. I couldn't imagine what it would be like to be in his shoes. But just because he wouldn't curse God doesn't mean that Job wasn't really struggling through all of this. Job had fallen into a really low place. So low, he was beginning to wish he'd never been born. Now, it's some pretty heavy stuff, so we'll only read a bit of it, but let's look at Job chapter 3, verses 1 to 10. At last Job spoke, and he cursed the day of his birth. He said, "Let the day of my birth be erased, and the night I was conceived. Let that day be turned to darkness. Let it be lost even to God on high, and let no light shine on it. Let the darkness and utter gloom claim that day for its own. Let a black cloud overshadow it, and let the darkness terrify it. Let that night be blotted off the calendar, never again to be counted among the days of the year, never again to appear among the months. Let that night be childless, let it have no joy. Let those who are experts at cursing, whose cursing could rouse Leviathan, curse that day. Let its morning stars remain dark. Let it hope for light, but in vain. May it never see the morning light. Curse that day for failing to shut my mother's womb, for letting me be born to see all of this trouble." It's pretty rough. Yeah. Obviously, Job was in such a low point at that place. I can't even really imagine how he must have been feeling. And the reason I wanted to share that with you this morning is that sometimes we might feel like God doesn't understand how we're feeling. All right? But when we see things like this in the Bible, it becomes so obvious that Scripture really is full of every human experience. Scripture may be over 2,000 years old, with books like Job even older again, but there's still so much relevance to the things we're feeling today. Have you ever felt like Job? Have you ever wished you were never born? Firstly, can I encourage you to make sure that you share that with someone? If you're feeling that low, please don't keep that to yourself. It's important that you're able to share that with someone you trust, a parent, a doctor, a counselor. It really helps to share that burden. But secondly, I want you to know that God understands. God knows that you feel like that. I believe God puts things like this passage of Job into Scripture to reassure us that he really does understand even our deepest, darkest feelings. And it's okay to tell God how you're feeling too. We don't have to pretend with him. We don't have to hide. God already knows everything we think and feel anyway, so we can't hide it from God even if we tried. So why not talk to him? Tell him when you're feeling low. Ask him for comfort and peace. Now, there's still a fair bit to go in the book of Job, and while I wish I could say it gets better for him straight away, it doesn't. But spoiler alert, everything works out for Job in the end. So even though his pain here was real, it wasn't final. And that's my challenge for you too. If you find yourself in low spots like Job did, please know that while that pain is real, it's not final. God has something better in store for you. And when we seek his wisdom and understanding, we will be able to see that there is a future for us. Yes, darkness will come, but Scripture tells us in 1 John that God is light, and light always overcomes the darkness. It was true for Job, and it's true for you too.